We're live. Okay, hello YouTube. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, y'all. You know me, it's Brennan White, also known as Sultan Ali Redbeard or many other nicknames. And if you are new to my channel, I'm among one of the top 10 most well-known people using social media to raise awareness for the Ethnic Qarsherskiyan community. When you're doing research on my people, you'll probably find some videos of me or posts of me that my relatives re-uploaded somewhere on the internet. I have collaborated with many channels, and I got some channels of my own across social media, including right here on YouTube. Hello, welcome to my channel. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the Tidewater Creole people. And the Tidewater Creole people, as well as the Madison County Yellowbones, or the Yellowville people of London, Ohio, as they're called, those two groups of people are probably two of the most well-known Qarsherskiyan subgroups that have a lot of people in them that self-identify as Qarsherskiyan. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the term Qarsherskiyan, it was created by a close group of friends, tight-knit kinfolk, who knew each other and were related back in 1991. Them were folks from the town of London, Ohio. That's where some of my ancestors come from. And the term Qarsherskiyan describes basically anyone who either descended from Ethnic Creoles, brought to the Atlantic coasts of the USA or Canada before, the Civil Rights era, or it could mean anyone in the USA or Canada of a type of heritage known as triracial isolate, or early mixed-race Americans, or multi-generationally mixed-race Americans and Canadians that aren't part of one of the already organized and named triracial isolate groups as they stood back in 1991. So if you're of a heritage that could be described as similar to that of the Melanesian community, for example, but you didn't descend from the Melanesian community, you're not Melanesian, you're not Lumbee, you're not from the Redbone folks out in Louisiana and Texas, you're not from the Chestnut Ridge community in Barber County, West Virginia, then what do you call this heritage? That's where the term Qarsherskiyan was made to describe this heritage we have. It's a more newer name for a community that has existed for centuries. The community is nothing new, but through the age of the internet, after the term was posted to the internet around late 2019, many people in our community have connected with one another in ways we hadn't before. And we're discovering that there's all different kinds of distinct subgroups in our community. And in this video, we're going to be talking about one of the largest of them all, and one of the more well-known groups of Qarsherskiyan folks. And they are known as the Tidewater Creoles. They are the mixed-race Black and Native American families that live in the Tidewater region, which is concentrated corally around the Hampton Roads area, which is like the Virginia Beach metropolitan area, or Hampton Roads. So think Southeast Virginia and Northeast North Carolina. But really, it's the whole Tidewater coast, from the Gullah Geechee coast near the Florida-Georgia border north to Jacksonville, North Carolina, and then outside the Gullah Geechee coast, further up the coast to Delaware, or some people argue southern New Jersey even. And so, for example, many of the Native American tribes in this area are Tidewater Creole folks. So they're part of the Qarsherskiyan community. They are a mix of Black, White, and Native American, because these tribes on the East Coast were some of the first tribes to be contacted after colonization, and unfortunately, due to the genocide and diseases and all the wars, the Native American population in many areas was decreased by 99%. So Indigenous American people are living in a post-apocalyptic world where their whole societies have nearly been toppled and their people have been nearly decimated, and it's crazy to think about, right? That's the reality for people of indigenous descent here in North America, unfortunately. But also, Black families too. Some of the first Black Americans, or the first Black people brought to the Americas, they might not have considered themselves American. Many of them might have seen themselves, at least at first, as captives brought here that came from elsewhere. But people brought from Angola, they said 20 and some odd Angolan folks were brought to colonial Jamestown, Virginia, way back in the 1620s. They were some of the first Black people brought to what would become the lower 48 U.S. states of the United States of America. So the oldest Black American communities originated in the Tidewater region, and that has allowed for centuries of potential intermarriage with their white and Native American neighbors. So many of these mixed race or Black or Native American families, depending on how they identify, and any of these individuals who maintain ties with the tribes they descend from and are enrolled in tribes. Some of them are Native, some of them are Black, some of them they don't really feel like either. They're just like mixed race is more of how they identify. But all these people of this triracial isolate type heritage from coastal Virginia, including the Nansemond Nation, sometimes are considered Tidewater Creole. And Tidewater Creole is considered one of the Qarsherskiyan subgroups. Anyone of this Tidewater Creole heritage has the right to claim the term Ethnic Qarsherskiyan, because it was created for Atlantic Creole descendants brought to the area, but also for people of this triracial isolate type heritage, which exists in the area. And so there wasn't really any named organized triracial isolate communities there, except some of the Native American tribes were described as triracial isolates, like the Piscataway Conoy, the Nansemond, the Chickahominys, and some of those other Virginia tribes and Maryland tribes. Well, there was one term they used to call the, if I remember correctly, it was the Piscataway Conoy folks. They used to be called the Wee sorts, but that was like a term people made for them, and I forget the origin of it, but it was pretty offensive. So these people, they refer to themselves as Piscataway Conoy. That's what we're going to be calling them, the Piscataway folks. So yeah, a lot of these mixed race communities that exist, they identify as Native if they've maintained if they maintain ties with the tribes they descend from, or depending on how they look, many of them identify as Black or mixed race. But it's all, there's links connecting all these three subgroups as one Tidewater Creole community. And one characteristic is that many of them speak an accent that either is or is influenced by Tidewater English to varying extents. And that's one of the things that kind of unites them as one group under a vast cultural umbrella that covers many Black and Indigenous descended communities and mixed communities. And even kind of, in a way, it is a broader term for all these different communities, yeah. So let's talk about the Dismal Swamp Maroons. The Great Dismal Swamp is on the border of Virginia and North Carolina. And if you're one of the 3,000 people who knows about your heritage from the community and actually self-identifies as Qarsherskiyan as of early 2026, you've probably heard of the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons. Now, if you're one of the Qarsherskiyan people from the Tidewaters area, or from the central and northern Appalachian Mountains, or from the Midwest and Great Lakes region like my folks originally came from, then you probably heard of the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons, because it's a long-running theory that our community descended from the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons. There are some Qarsherskiyan communities that did not. Like, for example, the Whedon and Hazard families, they're part of the a lot of traffic where I'm at, sorry. The Hazard and Whedon families, they're Afro-Indigenous, meaning mix of Black and Native American. They're part of the Narragansett Nation in Rhode Island, up in New England. And yeah, they are of this Qarsherskiyan heritage. And they're from up in New England. And we don't know much about where their Black ancestors were, at least I don't. But I never heard no one claim that they could have descended from the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons. It's possible they might have, but I never heard no one claim that about them. So there's some Qarsherskiyan folks in some areas that probably didn't. But most of us in the northern and central Appalachia, Midwest, and Great Lakes region and Tidewater regions, not all, but a lot of us have this theory that we descended from the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons. The trouble is, there's limited documentation on the surnames and families and individuals who were there. Mainly some of the more well-known Maroon community leaders and some of the more famous Maroons made it into the papers for their bravery or just for being discovered on accident. We know a few names, but most of the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons, there are thousands of people living out in the swamps. Sometimes temporarily, sometimes people lived out there their whole life and called this swamp home forever, permanently. For many, it was a stop on the Underground Railroad. But from the Great Dismal Swamp, black folks were able to launch successful raids of neighboring plantation, and they launched several slave rebellions. And they probably inspired Nat Turner, the very Nat Turner that we've all learned about. Hopefully you've heard of him. Maybe you might not if you're new to my channel and you're not interested in this kind of stuff. I don't know. But, yeah. So, it's a pretty big deal. And not enough people talk about the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons in history. We are not really taught about it in school like we should be. I had to talk to some of my elders. And someone said, yeah, we probably descended from them people that lived out in the Great Dismal Swamp. They lived out there. They launched the slave revolts. You know, there was this guy who actually bought his freedom on the canal, and his name was Moses Grandy. And if you look at him, his nose is kind of similar to the White Low Nose. If you look at the old paintings we have of him. I was like, what? And then I did some research online. I found a descendant of Moses Grandy, who was interviewed by several news stations and stuff. It was always raising awareness for the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons, trying to keep the legacy alive and make sure people don't forget. Good job he did. And you betcha, he was kind of similar to my grandpa's nose. They said that that guy looked like he had the White Low Nose. So, yeah, who knows? Maybe we could be related, maybe not. Many of my relatives think so. It could be a coincidence. I'm a bit more skeptical, but I believe it's very possible that we may have very well descended from the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons. And you should study them. These guys, they built houses out in the swamp on stilts, bro. They were way out in the swamp on islands in the middle of the swamp, so that the colonizers couldn't find them and capture them and put them into slavery or put them down. And it's thankful that they were able to survive out there for so long. They did such a good job at hiding. Archaeologists sure have one heck of a time finding these sites, and we don't know a lot about them at all. I pretty much told you a summary of kind of what everyone knows, but the deeper you dig, the more fascinating it gets. There's a whole lot, and stuff is being uncovered every day. So do study the Great Dismal Swamp Maroons. That might be a lead for those of you interested in exploring the origins of Qarsherskiyan heritage. But yeah, man, I make this live stream on my YouTube channel in hopes to educate other people. Everything I say is stuff that I learned from some of my friends and family who are part of the Qarsherskiyan community, some of my elders and some of my kinfolks. They tip me off on all kinds of things. They kind of steer me in the right direction on what to study, and they tell me a bunch of stuff that I didn't know. And so, yeah, I have to give credit to my people, man. I don't know all this because I'm a genius. I know it just because I listen. And if y'all listen, y'all know everything I tell you too. And I hope that you find other people like me who are interested in this heritage, who are documenting it using the internet, creating a massive archive for future generations. That's the goal of me and a couple dozen other folks from the Qarsherskiyan community since the term Qarsherskiyan got published in 2019. And you know, sometimes I meet descendants who, they are like, oh, that's so cool. I was always wondering. I wanted to know about this heritage. I always wondered. I always had questions. Can you help me do a tree, build a family tree? I want to find where the native comes in. I want to find out what ship my ancestors came when they were enslaved and brought here. They want to know all these things. I do my best to help them. But then they're like, but the word Qarsherskiyan is hard to pronounce. So I'm just not going to learn how to pronounce it and say it. And I'm like, all right. So that happens a lot. But more and more people are interested in their heritage. And our community is doing pretty well. We're pretty strong. And more we're starting to talk to our relatives, attend family gatherings, when you're doing work with genealogy and DNA research and we're looking into our history and everything like that, it's interesting, and more people need to start talking to each other to get involved, and it's really helped bring our families closer together again. Just like in the old days when we had to be closer together to survive and defeat stigma and discrimination. Now we're coming together again. Colorism tried to divide our community, and it failed, thankfully, but it tried pretty bad. Some folks that look more like me, they started trying to pass as white. They got a big chip on their shoulder for their own cousins, and they don't want to admit that they got black in them. Isn't that crazy? Not me, I couldn't be like them. And then some of the darker folks in our family, they don't want to admit they're part white, and they're saying they hate the white folks. So that's that, I guess, you know. But in the end, people will eventually know the truth, that we are all related and we're all mixed race in the Qarsherskiyan community. I'm not one of those like kumbaya people trying to pretend that all Americans are mixed race. I've seen people spreading all kinds of misinformation that upsets me a lot, and I've corrected it, and I'm not afraid to correct it however many times. I met someone who looked like a white American, but he was 12% Native American. And I was like, how are you 12% racially Native American and you don't know about your Native heritage and what tribe you descended from? Like, if you have that much Native American DNA and you descended from East Coast tribe, you should be enrolled in the Indigenous nation. He was like, really? That's a small amount. I was like, dude, that's more than most natives on the East Coast have, dude. Blood quantum isn't the full picture. You should try to find out what tribe you descended from and reconnect with that community if they accept you. They most likely will. So, that's crazy, bro. And people saw my video talking to that guy about that and saying that. They were leaving comments claiming that all white Americans have Native American DNA. No, that's absolutely not true at all. Most white Americans have no Native American DNA whatsoever. But I'll tell you, 1 out of every 10 white Southerners has at least 1% black ancestry. Let me repeat that, guys. 1 out of every 10 white Southerners has at least 1% black ancestry. Most of them don't know or don't want to admit it, though. And many of them created imaginary native Cherokee princess grandmas in their family tree. You'll always hear people say, my grandma was a Cherokee princess. And that just means she was probably black, and they just don't want to admit it. The Cherokee didn't have princesses, and the Cherokee Nation is one of the most well-documented East Coast tribes in terms of genealogy and stuff. If someone actually descended from the Cherokee Nation, they would probably be enrolled in it, and they would probably know exactly who their native ancestor was. And it wouldn't just be some vague story like, well, my mom always told me she was a Cherokee princess, and that was about it. Like, now, dude, all these people who falsely claim heritage that they don't have, not only is it really disrespectful, not only is it self-hating, and I don't know why they just won't admit that they got black in them. There's no shame in that. Only there should be pride in who you are and where you come from. So when I hear people spreading these rumors claiming everyone in America is mixed, that's a lie, and I'm gonna call it out. Most white Americans are just white, or they got a bit of black ancestry in them usually. It's something else. But once you have ancestors that lived in the USA in the 1700s or earlier, like before your 1800, the chance of you having indigenous heritage jumps way up. But the average black American, often many have tiny bits of native ancestry and trace amounts because, you know, the people of color were marrying one another, but for much of history it was illegal for them to marry into white families. But they would marry each other, and Native Americans sometimes were indentured servants or slaves and worked on the plantations alongside black people. That's something they don't want to teach you about in history, but it's the truth. And many black Americans do have small amounts of native DNA. But of course, obviously we don't see like most black Americans enrolled in tribes. Many of them have been disconnected from that part of heritage, not really because of blood quantum, but just because of history. The one drop rule. If you had one drop of African DNA, they would just label you as black or color. So, you know, there's people who had blonde hair and blue eyes who were considered black, and they were enslaved, and descriptions of runaway black slaves with blonde hair and blue eyes would be on old posters for slave catchers to know they could get a reward for catching these people who ran off to try and have a better shot at life, you know? I mean, even in the Qarsherskiyan community, people like me are often called light-skinned black, but we always have like red or blonde highlights in our hair. It's from that multi-generationally mixed race ancestry. The racist white supremacists who harass me and stuff and hate people like me who are working for the Qarsherskiyan community, trying to put out documentation and information to help our community better organize and stuff and take more pride in our heritage. The racist neo-Nazis don't want us talking about our mixed race heritage. A lot of people recognize me when I'm walking down the street. And sometimes there's people who honk and wave and smile because they like what I'm doing. And sometimes there's people who want to show off their loud cars. But anyways, the racist white supremacists don't want us talking about our mixed heritage and stuff, because they think that any time a person of color marries into a white family, that all of a sudden there's going to be no more red or blonde hair or colored eyes or any of that stuff. They think, oh, it's going to disappear and be gone forever. It's like, no, buddy, that's not how it works. So in the Qarsherskiyan community, we are multi-generationally mixed race for generations, right? So you get mixed race people marry mixed race people. They have kids that are mixed, and those kids grow up to marry mixed people. We're really a people of our own now, our own kind of people, basically. But what happens is when the black person, let's say a black man marries a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes, their kid might come out look somewhat like the former President Barack Obama, right? This is the kind of thing you might expect. But if President Barack Obama looking kid, we'll call him Kid 1. If Kid 1 grows up and marries either another mixed person who had one parent that was blonde, or they marry a white person, then their kid will probably come out with the blonde hair and blue eyes, because it's a recessive gene, yes, so it needs both parents to have the gene. But if both parents have the gene in them, it expresses itself. And more recent that ancestry is from the person with blonde hair or blue eyes or both, or the higher amount of DNA you have with those traits, the more likely it is to express itself. So in the Qarsherskiyan community, one scenario I've seen before is there can be someone who's 80% African, like 80% sub-Saharan African, 1% North African, and 6% Native American. So that's 87% of their DNA. The other 13% is European. But in the afro that they have for hair, they'll have an afro, and it'll be blonde, and they'll have blue or green eyes. And the way this happens is basically, imagine if there's two kids that aren't related, but both of them have the same origin. They had one white parent and one black parent. And each of the kids' white parents, whether it was the mother or the father, each of the kids, one of their parents was white, and they also had blonde hair and blue eyes. So now two kids come out, and they're around half white and half black, around 50-50. DNA doesn't inherit perfectly, 50-50%. It's kind of random. Like, you'll inherit like 51.2% from one parent and 48.8% from another, for example. But these kids are around like half white, half black. And then they grow up and they meet each other. Remember, they're not related. So they marry. Now, these kids have mixed race kids that are 50% black and 50% white. But they express the gene for blonde hair and blue eyes. And they have blonde hair and blue eyes. Now, each of these two kids born from these two couples that marry and have their own kids, let's say they have 5 kids, which we'll call kids 1, 2, 3, 4, and kid 5. Now, each of these 5 kids marries into a black family. Okay? So, and each of them that marries into a black family, each has one kid. And we'll call them kid 6, 7, 8, 9, and kid 10. Now, from these kids 6 for 10, each one of them is around 25% white and 75% black. But now, let's say that each of them marries another kid of similar heritage. And now, they all have 5 more kids that are all still 75% black and 15% white. But they can still have the blonde hair and blue eye genes. And then those kids grow up to marry into other mixed race families and black families over generations. But do you see where this is going? And the genes, they keep expressing themselves this way. That's kind of what happened in the Qarsherskiyan community. So the racist neo-Nazis, they hate us because we're mixed race. And they think that us just existing is somehow going to make white people disappear. But when they say white people, all they mean to them is someone with white skin who can have like red or blonde hair or blue or green or gray eyes or something like this. We have many people like that in the Qarsherskiyan community, but they're mixed race. They have, like me, like curly hair, even tighter curls than me. They'll have afro, yeah? And racist people look at these kids with hatred and disgusted faces, as if we aren't deserving of being treated like human beings. And they hate us. But this time, they don't hate us because they think that we're replacing them. It's an envy and jealousy. They hate us because they're like, hey, you guys have our features. Those are supposed to be our traits. You guys are stealing these features from white people. And we're just existing the way we were born, the way God intended that we were created this way. And they just hate us. As if we stole their identity or something. As if we robbed their freaking driver's license from them. So, and if you talk about this stuff, it makes the true neo-Nazi mad and irate. Because the true neo-Nazis know all their propaganda is BS. They just want to keep hatred spreading. The ones who aren't true neo-Nazis are those who just have hatred because they believe the propaganda. Once you take them out to show them reality, take them out to meet black people and see that, yes, there's lots of good black people. Good black people totally exist. You can meet some and be friends with them. They could be a really cool guy. You never knew that, but it's true. Then these people will come out of their shell and they'll change their ways and they'll stop being racist. The true neo-Nazis are so racist, even if they find out that they're wrong, they don't want to admit they're wrong. They just are mad now that you proved them wrong. And they just want to plug their ears, la la la, not listen. And that will keep spreading hatred and fear-mongering, and they'll keep telling all the people over in the white community that they're going to disappear or some crazy stuff. So, that's just a random rant. I don't know how I got down this rant. Y'all, I got ADHD, and my mind is just as jumpy as me. It's all over the place sometimes. I did cover all the things I wanted to cover this video. Dismal Swamp Maroons, Resistance, Tidewater Creoles, Qarsherskiyan subgroup. But somehow I got a little sidetracked, and that just is a glimpse into my mind and the way I think and the way I see the world just growing up. The way people have treated me, the way people look at me and they talk to my face, or how they talk behind my back and they think I'm not listening. It's just kind of a look into how my life has influenced my views and the way I see the world around me. With all the hatred I've experienced and all the discrimination and all the people I've met, good people, bad people, and I've seen my friends and family get discriminated against. I've seen people I thought I cared about discriminating against me and my family, and it, made me not like these people anymore. Or sometimes it made me feel sorry for them, that they'd been misled so bad to think such crazy things that are just outrageous and unbelievable. So, that's just kind of gives you a glimpse into my life and shows you the kind of things neo-Nazis have said to me, and kind of how they say it over and over until I start thinking about their points. Now I have rebuttals for them and I can argue with them and win. And they just shut down, get mad, and don't want to admit they were wrong. So, yeah, that was just kind of a glimpse into my mind, I guess. And Yeah, it is what it is, yo. But I'll tell you, people in this country, the USA, are so obsessed with race and so confused. But they've given birth to monsters like me, and we're gonna fix this problem. We out here. Cheers, innit, bruh? Have a good day. It's gonna be a day of cheers. Cheers to you.